Hello friend, John Dalton here, Further Emergence podcast, where we go into consciousness, the mystery and love. And in this week we're going into rest, breath, meditation, joy, the energetic blueprint, manifestation and breatharianism. Now let's have a quick review of the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. First one I wrote, it says, "It can wait," and then it has in like Scrabble letters, rest. "You've done enough for now, rest. Be kind to yourself and rest." So I like this one, obviously, because I wrote it. But the idea of you've done enough, there's something very soothing about that. You've done enough for now. There's always, another moment. There's always time to get up. But I've spoken before about the momentum of life. And one of the things that makes us tired is the momentum. And stopping and resting. And really when you rest, when you take time to stop and rest, even if it's like for 5 minutes, what you're doing is it's a kind of benediction to your body. Your little body that's doing everything, even your little mind, that's trying to make sense of it all and trying to navigate this illusion as if it's for real. It's exhausting. So when you take time to rest, you're going, thanks so much for putting in the effort. You're doing great. My little body, my little personality, my little mind, you're doing great. Let's just have a moment of just being. And that's probably one of the reasons why rest is so restorative, is that it's got this quality of adoration and just coming into being. Okay, the next one I wrote as well, and it's kind of a description of my one-to-one work, because I came across this image, and it's like a person, but they're all sort of glowing and light, and you can kind of see through them a little bit. You can see their brain and all this kind of stuff. I thought, wow, that's just the way people often work, appear to me when I work with them. Because the way the one-to-one work that I do goes is with, there's a certain amount of talking and kind of reflection and feedback and different perspectives. I'll offer them different perspectives. But then there'll come a point where we turn off the cameras. And we turn off the cameras purely for my sake, because I get too self-conscious when the cameras are on. Because it's where I connect to the person behind the scenes. So if you've listened to some of the meditations I've done, we sort of pull back from this virtual reality suit in the meditations and kind of connect with each other. It's a version of that I do. So it's like I meet the person behind the scenes, and often when I do that, I start to, I'll do different kind of movements and stuff, and I know I get a bit inhibited if the cameras are on. So that's where the cameras go off. Anyway, the cameras go off, person lies down, I connect with them behind the scenes, and often I see, images and different things, and this image just really struck me as like, wow, that's very like what I see. So then that prompted me to write this. And what I say is, working with someone across the vast distance, which is an illusion, we connect in mind and heart and spirit. In that connection, miracles are born. With my eyes closed, this is often how they look to me. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. That, I'll see things changing, whatever, and it's amazing things. Miracles do happen, and I think I talked about some of them before in previous podcasts. And then we turn the cameras back on, and then we talk some more. Okay, I wrote this one as well, the next one, and yeah, I'll just read it. Got a picture of a big wave, and it says, "It comes in waves. If you run, it will keep pace with you. If you hide, it'll find you. If you distract yourself, it will wait. Instead, breathe. Breathe steady, breathe slow, breathe through. It comes in waves and it will pass." So that applies to everything. It's very good for grief, because grief comes in waves. And often when the waves come, you can feel swamped by them and overwhelmed. But if you can wait and breathe and don't try and avoid it And as I said before, you know, internal pain is not like external pain. When there's an external pain, the smart thing to do is get away from it, to pull your hand out of the fire or whatever. That's the smart thing. Internally, it flips. If you try and get away from an internal pain, it will just, you can't get away. It's inside you. You can't get away from it. So it sort of chases you around on the inside. So there is no avoiding it. There is no distracting yourself for it. So the smart thing, the efficient thing I have found is to turn around and face it and almost run towards it. Or what I do is I sort of saying, I want to feel this as much as there is. I want to feel this as much as I can bear. And weirdly, it gets worse for about, 5 minutes, and then it actually starts to go. That's been my experience, Now I have to do that repeatedly. It depends on how many waves are coming. But this idea of not trying to get away from it, standing, facing it, and breathing, and it will pass, knowing it will pass, because everything passes. Because the great thing is, your worst heartbreak, your worst grief, all disappears every night. That's how you know it's not real. That's how you know it's transient, and it's just part of this illusion that we're in. Okay, the next one I didn't write, but I think it's brilliant. It says, meditation. It's better than sitting around doing nothing. Which is such a beautiful twist on what meditation is, because from the outside, meditation looks like sitting around doing nothing. And in a way, internally, certainly the way I meditate, where I'm turning off the pictures, turning off the sound, I'm stopping thinking, that is kind of doing nothing on the inside as well. But it's this twist on that kind of, it's better than sitting around doing nothing, which is kind of what meditation is. But it's a very active, focused, purposeful kind of nothing. I wrote the next one, and it's just, there is wisdom in joy. And that was just an insight I had. I thought, that is so true, because you don't necessarily link joy and wisdom. Wisdom's sort of a bit serious and a bit stuffy and a bit, grandiose. Wisdom. Joy is a bit fluffy and, bunnies and lollipops and butterflies and rainbows. They don't necessarily go together, but there is incredible wisdom in joy, in the simplicity and the energy of joy. And, joy is actually not that simple. It's simple and complex at the same time, in my experience. Right, farm news. The main farm news is lots more lambs and lots of rain. We had a long dry spell, and now it's like nature's making up for it. The rivers are very high. Everywhere's kind of flooded and sloppy. It's nice. I kind of like it. For some reason, the rain doesn't feel depressive and heavy. Sometimes the clouds can feel like they're sitting on top of my head. These don't feel like that. And there's a lot of water coming in, and it's lovely. It's great. It's a great start for the spring. Did you know that these podcasts are on YouTube? If you're just listening, you can watch them on YouTube, because I do walk around outside when I'm answering questions, and you get to see the nature that I am very lucky to be living in. Do you know I have a blog? I write things, and every Sunday I send out friendly notes. Are you getting them? If not, go to the website, breatharianism.com. If you want to write to me yourself, either to tell me how it's going, love hearing about that, or if you have a question, or if you want to hear my perspective on something, john@furtheremergence.com. Love to hear from you. Okay, so here's a question. It says, hi John, so the blueprint changes through our experiences? When you said you were changing your avatar, would that be like a metamorphosis? Would it mean you change your blueprint? So to answer that, let me go yonder to near a river, not far from here. Well, that's kind of mixing two things there, the avatar and the blueprint. They are kind of related, but not too directly. So, blueprint, when I talk about the blueprint, I'm talking about the energetic blueprint that underpins your body. And it comes from the idea that the cells in your fingernail, for example, know to be cells in your fingernail and not cells in your eye or your hair
based on an energetic blueprint underpinning your body. So if you think of an acorn, you plant a little acorn in the ground, the acorn throws up this energetic blueprint of the fully finished oak tree, and then the cells all stick to or follow that blueprint, that pattern. And like if you look at humans embryologically, we, once fertilization has happened, one cell becomes two, two become four, four become eight, and so on, but they're all the same cell. And when there's a point when suddenly they start to differentiate and go into different shapes. Now there's schools of thought that go, well, that's DNA, that's the DNA working. And that's true, but there's also a strong, suggestion of this blueprint as well. And Rupert Sheldrake goes into this a lot in his morphic resonance and morphic fields theory. And I think there's something in it. Certainly in practice, I found that one of the ways that trauma works is that it affects the blueprint. So if someone's in a car accident and they hit the steering wheel with their chest, that puts an impression in their chest, and you can't see it on the surface, and it might be like 10 years later and they're still having pains in their chest and whatever, and that's because the blueprint's bent out of shape underneath. So it's kind of like the magnet under the paper that the iron filings stick to is bent out of shape, so the iron filings always go in that shape, the iron filings being the cells of our bodies. So it's difficult to change the blueprint. You can change it with trauma and that kind of thing, and there is a kind of like the way a human body goes along often feels like a piece of music to me, meaning at the beginning there's lots of activity in the music. When you're embryologically, when you're developing, my God, there's so much going on in those 9 months. And so, if it was a piece of music, I don't know music, but aren't there movements in pieces of music, like classical music? So it's like the first movement is very, lots of activity, lots of pace. Then it starts to slow down. But even as you're growing as a child, it's still pretty busy. There's still a lot going on. And it, often, like, say, going back to embryology, that's hard to say. Like, there's certain beats to that rhythm, so it's like if you miss a beat, like say there's a point when your palate comes up on either side and joins to form your hard palate. It's almost like if you miss that beat, you end up with like a cleft palate. And there's loads of other beats like that if you miss them, it can be hard to go back and restart that bit of music. And I've had quite a bit of experience with that, working with people and kids and babies and that kind of thing. And that often seems to be what we're trying to do, So that music continues on, and you grow and you change, and different things happen in your body. So it's hard to change that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just it's hard to change it. So that is the blueprint side of things, which is quite different from the avatar. The avatar idea was, I think it came out of a question about manifestation, or I was talking about manifestation, and this idea of that if, like, thinking about manifestation in terms of, this is all just a simulation, very real, very beautiful simulation, but it's when you've got the goggles on or the virtual reality suit on, it might feel very real, but there is a greater reality behind it. And I was talking about manifestation, why I'm interested in manifestation, because I would like the external world, I would like my little illusion to reflect me a bit more. Things like cruelty, war, hunger, greed, exploitation, the stuff in the news. I'd like that to stop, because that's not what I have on the inside of me. And it seems to me like gaining a mastery of manifestation would help, would be good for that kind of thing. And then what I was saying was, so far what it seems to me like is that just like a virtual reality kind of situation or game or that kind of thing, it seems much easier to change your own avatar. Like I don't play games really, but you know, the few that I have had a look at, you can change your avatar. I mean, don't Meta have a thing at the moment where they're trying to get everybody on avatars of themselves? So you can change all that stuff pretty easily. But it's much harder to change the rules of the game, you know. So you can make yourself tall or short, or give yourself any kind of clothes, facial hair shape, gender, you name it, you can change it with no problem. But you can't, you know, make the sky pink. You can't make the buildings be bigger or smaller than they are. This is within the game kind of thing. And I think there's a parallel. I think there's something similar in that you can change yourself in many ways. You can change your thinking, your beliefs, how you interact with people, all that kind of stuff. That's compared to changing the rules of reality. That stuff's relatively much easier to do. And I was saying that my sense is that it takes a collective of people who have mastered manifestation to be able to begin to change the rules a bit, I think. So that's the distinction between those two things. Like your blueprint is one thing, and possibly when you do change things about yourself, you do influence your blueprint. But there's the blueprint stuff, and then there's the avatar stuff. Those two seem separate to me. Separate but slightly related.
So in response to the question that I posted on Instagram, what's the biggest challenge you're facing at the moment in your spiritual life? Somebody responded, they said, "Hi John, this is not a challenge, but I'm just checking in how your liquid food / possibly no food gig was going." So back to the river to answer this one.
Food gig, that's hilarious. So just to bring you up to speed, what this person's talking about is, I mentioned this on another episode where I've been on a kind of a journey with food, which started many, many years ago, like probably 40 years ago, where just out of nowhere, I had the idea, or it just popped into my head of like, at some stage I won't need to eat or drink. And it was like, wow, okay, that's pretty out there thinking. And I didn't think any more of it. Then, I don't know, 10, 15 years later, another like step in this journey was I caught my reflection in a shop window and had one of those moments, a bit like when you wake up and you don't know who you are. I kind of was like, who is that person in the reflection? They seem very dense. I don't mean thick, I mean like just their body seems very dense, short and wide. And you know, I'm nearly 6 foot, like I'm not a short person. So it wasn't like that kind of thing. It was just, I just didn't recognize myself. I just sort of had a sense that inside I was much, much taller and much, like not so dense, a lot less dense. So actually, those, I don't know if you've seen any of the Star Wars movies, but there's these very tall creatures. They do the clones. I remember seeing them and going, they look familiar. Anyway. So then didn't think any more about any of that stuff. I did hear about breatharians. I did hear about the pranic journey and all that. They all seemed a bit kooky to me. Was not interested in those at all. And then I heard about people dying doing it, you know, just basically starving themselves to death. That sounds like, geez, that doesn't sound good at all. So didn't really, you know, it was sort of on the back burner all that time, you know. It wasn't like in the forefront of my thoughts. I had other things going on, let's say. And then, as is the way of things with me, I've said before many times, I don't have any willpower for stuff, but I end up doing amazing things that from the outside looks like I've got lots of willpower. But the way it happens for me is I just kind of know something is you know, I finished with it. So like I used to smoke cigarettes. I used to smoke 50 cigarettes, 40 or 50 a day. Not for long, for about 2 years. Loved it, totally enjoyed it. It was the best fun, except the bronchitis and the, chest infections. But the actual cigarettes were great. Um, and then it was just kind of over. I went and I was on a kind of a retreat, and it was 5 days of, no nothing, one of which was no smoking. And when I kind of took that as like an opportunity to not smoke again. And I had never smoked cigarettes since. Similarly with alcohol, used to love drinking. Oh my God, I'm Irish, I'm mad about it. Irish and Australian, But it got to a point where I was like, okay, that's enough now. I've had enough drink, and I just stopped drinking, which is unusual in Ireland. So same with gluten, coffee, sugar. It all just, I got to a point where it's like, that's enough now. Finished with that. And it was, no willpower required. I don't have any willpower. And similarly, when I moved to this property, I looked up the side of the valley. It was like, I'm going to be going up there, walking up there, bare feet hiking, and I'm going to be going in that river, doing the, cold water immersion stuff. Neither of which I particularly wanted to do, but I kind of knew, oh God, okay, I'm going to be doing that. So I did all those. So then, out of nowhere, it was like, okay, now it's time to stop. It's time to start the process of letting go of food and liquid. I was like, oh, okay. You sure? I've got a lot of things going on. Like, yeah, no. And I was like, well, how am I going to do that? Like, what kind of, I don't even know how to, I haven't got a clue how to begin, how to even begin or to think about beginning doing that. And what came to me was, well, just start with stop chewing. Can you do that? Can you stop chewing? I was like, yeah, okay, well, that sounds pretty easy, actually. Yes, I can stop chewing. So that's what I've done. I stopped chewing. I just started having soup, smoothies. It's basically like you can have whatever you like, just don't chew it. So anything I particularly wanted, I would just liquidize it. And yeah, that's what I've been doing. Now, I've since kind of done more and more research because, as I was saying when I was talking about this before, the process of like doing that meant that I started to drop weight, and as I dropped weight, it was a bit like the permafrost melting. That's what it felt like anyway, because all sorts of trauma and anxieties and stuff just started to come out. And I realized what I was storing in my layers of fat, my little fat suit. Not that I was, fat. I wasn't, but I did have a fat suit on without really even realizing it. So one of the things I discovered was that there's levels to being a breatharian. Okay, now being a breatharian is kind of like not cool anymore, particularly after those poor people died doing it. So there's all sorts of different names that they have for it, but I've heard quite a lot of them talking about it. And yeah, there's levels. So there's 4 levels, and apparently level 4 is no food and liquid, but level 3 is a liquidarian. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even know that was a thing, but that's what I've been doing. So yeah, it's been a long process. Like I've been doing it for, I think, about 10 months now. And I've shed a lot of weight, and it's amazing. I should have shed a lot more weight than considering I was eating less and less and less. Yeah, I should have shed a lot more weight, and I did lose weight, and then I stabilized. I wasn't eating any more, but I stabilized, which is one of the things that they say happens. And just recently I've had the feeling of like, yeah, okay, it's time to start letting go time to go to level 4, I suppose. And again, going, how do I do that? And like one of the things I realized was, physically I probably I'm ready for it, but mentally it was like the way the day stretched out without any breaks, without any food breaks. I found that very hard. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do, you know? So it's funny this question came in because just this week, I had my first day. I just came into I thought that was it actually. I had a day where I was like, okay, that's it now. No food and water. That's it. I'm on my way now with it, and it was surprisingly easy. You know, to go the whole day without food or water, surprisingly easy. I thought, oh, okay, yeah, this is better than I thought, and I thought then the next day when I woke up, I felt very low energy and very shaky, didn't feel great, and it was like, oh, okay, and then it was like, oh yeah, you got to like get used to it, because there's the thing is, like, particularly the people who are talking about doing this now, they're very much stressing how gentle you have to be with yourself on it. You can't bulldoze your way into this. I have found this to be very true. You have to listen to your body really carefully, like super carefully, and gently step forward. And one of the things is, if you can't fast your way into this through just, you know, brute force fasting. You'll damage yourself for sure. So a lot of those kind of, you know, low energy, shaky kind of feelings, that's more to do with toxicity. You're still toxic. You still got toxins, you know. So what I thought was the beginning of my level four thing wasn't. It was the beginning of introducing days of no food and water, you know. So I don't know whether that's going to be once a week or every other day or how it'll kind of go. I'm kind of listening all the time to my body, how it's kind of dealing with the changes, because what it feels like, and this does kind of tie into that last person's question about avatars, manifestation, and so on, is my sense of it is that this is an evolutionary thing. My sense, what it feels like I'm doing in my body is activating something that's dormant, or that's, you know, that's built into it. So it'd be a little bit like, you know, if nobody had ever gone through puberty before, talking to somebody who was going through puberty, and going, wow, your body's really changing. How are you doing that? And they're going, I'm not really sure how I'm doing it. It feels like it's just part of the deal with this body. It just, you know, I'm growing hair in strange places, and I'm, you know, I'm growing, different things are happening. And my voice is changing, and, you know, all the things that go on in puberty. I have a feeling this is similar, and I have a feeling it starts at 40, because what I've observed is that seems to be when I've taken to calling it the thickening. You know, it's when the thickening happens. You know, nothing else has changed, and just people start getting thicker. You know, it's not like they're getting fat. I mean, they are in one way, but it's more to do with, there's a sort of a density starts to come into their system. And I have a feeling that that's the beginning of their system saying, okay, you can start to eat less and less and less now, you know? And it seems like an important thing, because in the world we seem to have like this question of the aging population, you know, that people are living longer. And that's lovely. But there's concern about the economics of that and how that's going to work. So it seems to me like that it would be a beautiful thing if people who were, you know, from their 40s on, and maybe by the time they got to their 60s, they transitioned away from food and water altogether, that would have a pretty amazing impact on the idea of consumption, and the way we consume, and the place that older people would have. Because really in our society, once you get past 60, you know, you can kind of disappear a bit. You kind of let off. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to produce anything. You don't have to. So there's in older people, there's a great sense of meaningless that can come into their lives, which is a shame, because, as I've said before, just because you're older doesn't mean you get to be wiser. But there's a higher chance that you'll be wiser. You've experienced things. You've had the edges knocked off you a bit. You can be gentler. You can be softer. So there's a great resource there. So I could see how if a lot of people did this, that it would change. It would kind of activate a whole section of the population. Now that's all just you know things that have occurred to me as I've been kind of on this journey. But it was remarkable to me how easy it was to go for one day without food and water. Because I have fasted before in my life, and man, I was guzzling the water, like I was trying to eat the water. So the idea of like not drinking was pretty amazing, and it was really easy. Now the next day, that was a different thing, but I could see how if I keep doing this kind of, every other day or just even once a week, how it will get easier, because whatever residual toxins are in my system or whatever changes need to happen to be activated in my system, they'll just happen. And it will just happen easily. But yeah, ask me again in a little while. I'll update you how it's going. Energy-wise, I haven't had any reduction in energy at all. I still go hiking. Like somebody came to visit with me there last weekend, and we went up the side of the valley, and they were like, "You must be super fit." And I don't feel like I'm super fit at all, but I do feel a lot lighter. And as I've mentioned before, I feel even lighter again when I go up the side of the valley here when I'm in my bare feet. I just get so much energy coming up through the ground. So yes, I'll keep you posted. Thanks for asking. It's going well is the short answer. My food gig, lack of food gig is going well. And yeah, it's good.
All right, so yesterday was St. Patrick's Day here in Ireland, and as I mentioned before, thankfully we also now have a St. Bridget's Day, which is like the female counterpart to St. Patrick's. Not like they were together or a couple or anything like that, but in fact I think St. Bridget, as I mentioned, goes back, predates Christianity in Ireland. There was an Irish goddess who was before that, who they turned into St. Bridget. Anyway, it's St. Patrick's Day. That's the one that's well known. So this is the meme I put out on St. Patrick's Day. It says, "From the glistening rocks and misty smiles, and the dew-laden rushes and twinkling laughter, from the musical rivers and warm-hearted mountains, and a deep-rooted people steeped in ordinary mystery, on this day, like every other, we send you a friendly wave from Ireland." So I send that greeting to you. It's like that thing of Valentine's Day, or it's like oh, it's only on this day that I'm nice to my partner. It's like every day, people of Ireland are friendly and send a friendly wave out into the world. So I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. Talk to you again soon. Bye.